All right, let's dig into some supplements. Well, not yet. We're going to start with the basics. So first of all, what the hell is coronavirus? I need you guys to understand this stuff. We're gonna break this down real quick because it helps you understand supplements and why people are making the claims that they're claiming, right? So basically, it's a new version of SARS, which is serious acute respiratory syndrome. Now, that's why the technical name of the virus is actually SARS coronavirus 2, right? So we're dealing with SARS coronavirus 2. SARS coronavirus 2 is the virus. That's the virus that causes the illness COVID-19. So a lot of times these are being used interchangeably. It's kind of confusing people. SARS coronavirus 2 is the virus, leads to the illness of COVID-19, okay? Now, viruses are these teeny tiny little things. Now, there's a very helpful phrase that's used to describe viruses and how small they actually are. So viruses are so small that if bacteria had eyeballs, they couldn't see the viruses. Teeny tiny, okay? So it's basically a protein shell, and this carries DNA or RNA. You guys have heard me talk about DNA and RNA and ribosomes and all these things with genetics and epigenetics in past podcasts. You can listen to Dr. Anthony J and I talk about this. So these protein shells contain DNA or RNA and some enzymes that replicate. But these viruses, even though they have their own genome, they can't replicate without help. So what they do is they dock to cells and infect them. This particular virus, SARS coronavirus 2, does that by docking to something called an ACE2 receptor, ACE2. So it docks to this ACE2 receptor. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. So the virus infects epithelial cells that line your airways. Then they get the cell to copy their genome. They basically turn the cell into a zombie cell that just replicates the virus, right? Replicates the virus, and as those replicated viruses get released, they go out and infect other cells and turn other cells into zombie cells that replicate the virus. Oh boy, we got a serious problem. So this is a real problem. But the more serious problem is actually the body's response to this. And I have a helpful analogy that's going to help you grasp this. So there's something called the cytokine storm. Okay? Now, the cytokine storm is in response to this replicating virus. So the body makes a whole bunch of chemical messengers, and this creates an inflammatory response, like we talked about, your fever, whatever. This is a natural inflammatory response by the body. The goal of that response is to get a whole bunch of immune cells to come in and fight that virus, right? So these pro-inflammatory cytokines are produced. They act like a fire alarm for the firemen. Ah, the bell's going off. Holy crap, call in the immune cells. You got to go fight this infection, right? Now, after that acute inflammatory response, there are anti-inflammatory cytokines that come in, and they're charged with calming everything down, suppressing that crazy immune response. Calm everything down, everything gets back to normal, right? So generally speaking, the immune cells are able to fight the virus, and the anti-inflammatory cytokines come in behind it, and they calm everything down. The immune response is supposed to stop. What happens with the cytokine storm is that the inflammatory response goes out of control. Goes crazy, and the anti-inflammatory process never really happens, never really takes effect, and we get this runaway inflammation, okay? So the virus isn't necessarily as bad as the inflammatory response that tries to fight it. So the best analogy I've heard to describe this, I can't take credit for this, it's a great analogy, is that you have a bunch of little kids and they're shoplifting in a grocery store, okay? So you have this virus, bunch of little kids shoplifting in a grocery store. This is a problem. You don't want little kids shoplifting in a grocery store. So to solve the problem, the military calls in a drone strike and bombs the grocery store. Problem solved, sure, but with catastrophic and completely unnecessary results, right? Now, I know this is really nerdy. I get this is super nerdy, but it's absurdly important for you to understand. Most supplements that people take for immune support actually trigger the immune system in a very small way. We talk about this, phytonutrients, polyphenols, all these things are actually plant toxins, right? They trigger the immune system in a very small way. It's like a mini vaccination. If you are infected and the military has ordered the drone strike on the grocery store, you could potentially pop a bunch of supplements that would be the equivalent of sending in a SWAT team into the rubble to shoot all of the survivors in the face. You get the analogy? I hope this is working, right? So I'm gonna do my very best to steer you away from that possibility, which is why this list is very small. Very small, because I know, like JB said, both of us, we got a huge bullshit meter on this stuff. This is a very, very small list. And now The moment you've all been waiting for, it's taken me 37 fucking minutes to get here. We're going to talk about supplements.